Hey everyone, welcome to Reality TV News Update, the place where we bring you the latest updates, fun moments, and behind-the-scenes stories you won't want to miss. Birmingham, WIAT. During the summer, more than a dozen Americans enter a closed-off soundstage in Studio City, California, designed like a house. There are cameras and microphones all around them. 3 times a week, they are featured in primetime on CBS. The house guests face off in competitions that may be laughable. They strategize who they want evicted from their isolated environment. Those who were eliminated later in the season wait until there are still 2 contestants to decide who will win the season and $750,000. In between shows, their fellow Americans are watching them from homes, workplaces, and wherever else live feeds are accessible from. In contrast to other reality shows, this one features online discussions between fans based on what they see on the live feeds throughout the season. The comments may express excitement, comedy, complaining, controversy, or anger. Anyone who follows Major League Baseball with fervor would comprehend the devotion shown by showgoers. The program's name? Big Brother. Behind the Mirror. Behind the Mirror, Inside the World of Big Brother, a book written by podcaster Taran Armstrong that he wrote out of his love for the show and analyzing players, was published in November 22. In the book, Armstrong took a deep dive into a series with a cult following that shows the worst and best of humanity. There's 25 years of history and upwards of 100 days of live feeds every single season, and so trying to tell the story of just one season could fit a whole book, Armstrong said, let alone some of the influences behind the show's creation, some of the decisions that production has made, the discussions about the players and where they came from and what happened to them, and then also the audience, the communities that formed around the show, and sharing some of my own story through the show, and then also, of course, trying to tie it to some larger themes of how the show's a reflection of society. Trying to thread that needle was definitely one of the most interesting challenges I had for the book, but I also think it was one of the most rewarding because it was really just a matter of what are the major themes, the major issues I want to talk about, and the best examples of those things throughout the history of the show. It was really just a matter of what are the best examples of those things throughout the history of the show. Then, once I had that, it was just how do I then tell that story of those things sequentially in a way that is able to touch on everything while being a compelling story. Armstrong touches in the book how the US version of Big Brother was not a hit at first when it first aired on July 5, 2000. CBS acquired the rights to the series from Endemol, which was a Dutch media company. Even though they voted on who would be banished, Americans quickly lost interest in a show they found unappealing, despite watching the premiere with approximately 22 million viewers. Yet the live feeds, a new concept in 2000, grew throughout the year. That was appealing to Americans, and they have been a defining feature of the show for its existence. Armstrong claimed they convinced him to tell the series' story. They allow viewers to see the full spectrum of events. The live feeds are everything, Armstrong said. The show doesn't exist in the way that it does without the live feeds. The show's producers made significant changes for the second season, introducing a weekly head of household competition in which the winner put 2 house guests on the block for eviction. The other players evicted their fellow house guests. Even though the audience didn't play a part, it became interested in how the cast members treated one another. Dr. Will, the evil doctor, developed into an icon without him knowing it. The 3 final house guests were some of the last Americans to learn about 9/11. Viewers received the controversy and deception they wanted. The new format was a success. Certain seasons centered around twists like The X Factor and Project DNA. The golden power of veto, which presents the opportunity for a nominated house guest to be removed from the block, stuck. The power is awarded in a competition following the nomination ceremony. Armstrong wrote about strategies developing and evolving. Live feed viewers listened to racist, sexist, and homophobic remarks that never made network TV. A black contestant did not win Big Brother until its 23rd season. Armstrong provided his thoughts on why in the book and how the structure of alliances formed. It's personal show. Online communities formed, some of which took the side of a certain alliance. Armstrong wrote that his 13-year-old self saw Kaiser Rita in Season 6 as a storybook hero. Rita is an Iraqi Muslim and was 24 years old when he entered the house in 2005. American soldiers were fighting in the Iraq War, yet Rita joined an alliance in the house. The Season 6 stuff in particular came to my mind when I started working on the chapter about the early days of the Big Brother community because I always wanted to be telling his story. It's really difficult to tell a story about an online community, especially one that was so fractured and segmented as it was in the early days of the show. Armstrong said it made sense to tie it into a story of Rita and Jennifer Vasquez, because that is when the online community organized together. He said the community had the most intense fan reaction the show had ever seen during that season. Armstrong said he was outraged at the time. Big Brother changed following Season 7, which was made of returning players. Arnold Shapiro resigned from his executive producer role and things got weird, Armstrong wrote, right before entering Chapter 8, Controversy. The now well-known Big Brother commentator stopped watching the show. Armstrong wrote he was unaware that Season 10's premiere aired. His mother convinced him to watch the season when she said there was a house guest like the next Dr. Will. That contestant is not what the season is remembered for. He was the first evicted. Dan Giesling, who competed as a Catholic school teacher, is known for it. Armstrong thinks Season 10 is widely regarded as the best season of the show. It is the pinnacle, the golden standard of what the show can do at its best, Armstrong stated. It has some of the best strategy, some of the best drama, some of the best moments, characters, and so being able to tell the story of that season was important to me, because it was like, this is what this show is capable of when it's firing on all cylinders. In the book, Armstrong writes how he wonders how his life would be different if he did not experience Season 10. There were some fun moments where I was really able to reflect on some of the things that I felt had impacted me or changed me growing up, and I definitely think that watching Dan was one of those things. The way that he never gave up, the way that he was not somebody that seemed like he should be succeeding necessarily. He was an outcast on his cast. I talk plenty about outcasts in general over the course of the book, but I felt like I could relate to him in many ways. Most importantly, he was able to show mastery over a game and a situation that really requires the worst in you to thrive. Armstrong said the idea that someone like Dan Giesling could succeed in a space where he didn't fit in but continued to maintain his sense of self and morality resonated with him. Armstrong said it made him feel like he could succeed in the areas society placed him in. CBS imposed a diversity requirement for reality shows in 2020 that is no longer in place. Season 23, which aired in 2021, was the first Big Brother season under its requirements. An all-black alliance called the Cookout formed. Its 6 members were the final 6. Midwestern lawyer Xavier Prather won the season, breaking a Big Brother barrier. Armstrong said he started writing the book between Seasons 24 and 25, so he didn't have a choice on where to end it because of the publishing process. Yet he felt like Season 10 was a good place to conclude behind the mirror inside the world of Big Brother. The 2022 edition of the series featured Miss Michigan USA 2021 Taylor Hale. A black woman, Hale, watched some of Season 23's episodes when she found out about the cookout, but stopped once it made the final 6. Jesse Tannenbaum, a casting director for CBS, reached out to Hale. Despite thinking at one point Big Brother was a dying dinosaur that nobody watches, Hale expressed her interest in competing on the show over The Amazing Race and Survivor. From there, she did her homework. Armstrong wrote that Big Brother 3 was the last season of the show she saw before entering the house. Danielle Reyes, another black woman, finished in second place in 2002. In the book, Armstrong mentioned how Danielle was the queen of secret alliances and strategic innovation. Though Reyes lied, which Armstrong writes is encouraged, it went against the rules the house guests of the season set up. Armstrong wrote that based on the tone of the questions she received during jury questioning, it was evident that Reyes would not win because she was not in the top alliance. She lost the final vote 9-1. For some time, it was the closest a black woman had come to winning Big Brother. Hale was nearly evicted in her first week in the house. Armstrong wrote how she had an uphill battle when the season started. The pageant girl was scapegoated. Another player, however, exited the game before the first eviction. Hale was saved. Armstrong wrote how the live feeds told her true story and how she flipped her place in the house.
"Was my favorite part of the book to write," Armstrong said. "It just flowed out. Everything I had talked about in the book up to that point felt like it was being touched on by Taylor's story, from the issues with racism, misogyny, and just power structures in general, to the ways the twists were impacting the season, the way the strategy worked, the ways the competitions had been changing, like every piece of it. It just felt like it fit so well, the way I was able to connect it to things that had happened in the past." Hale became the first black woman to win Big Brother with an 8-to-1 vote, exactly 20 years after Reyes lost. Since then, 2 more black women have come out on top of their respective Big Brother seasons. The future of the cultural phenomenon. Armstrong said if he could continue writing the book, he would add an arc about competitions. Specifically, he would discuss the BB Blockbuster twist. In the past 2 seasons, the first part of the season has featured 3 nominees for eviction compete in a brief live challenge on Thursdays. The winner of the challenge is removed from the block, and house guests have mere minutes before casting eviction votes in the diary room. In seasons past, there were some weeks where it was a foregone conclusion who would be voted out if they lost the veto competition. The BB Blockbuster has heightened the importance of Thursday episodes. Rachel Riley, a native of Hoover, Alabama, finished her 3rd run on Big Brother in 2025. In 2010, she first entered the house. Her energetic and dynamic personality became a hit with the fans. She won the show the following season and then married her showmance, Brendan Villegas. According to Armstrong, Riley's return after all these years fits in with the larger themes of Big Brother, such as how she was eliminated in September. Armstrong said he has noticed producers are casting more athletes to be more cutthroat in the competitions. Armstrong said the game is a little bit broken, which superfans are aware of. Armstrong has observed a trend of casts knowing less about the show. He said he would like producers to focus more on the presentation and editing of the show. Yet the ratings for Big Brother 27 increased from the previous season. The cultural phenomenon that has been around since about the start of the 3rd millennium appears to be staying. Armstrong stated, "The show is so unique and so fascinating by itself that as long as they're not actively getting in the way, which they have in the past, it will be successful." When Out of the Shadows, the Untold Evolution of Big Brother arrived on shelves this week, the public was unprepared. The book, part history, part behind-the-scenes exposé, and part deeply emotional memoir, was written by television journalist and longtime fan Mara Devlin. But what truly set it apart wasn't just the interviews or the rare production notes, it was the tale that preceded the tale. Because Mara wrote the book after waking up from a coma. A journey interrupted. 3 years earlier, Mara was a rising star in entertainment journalism, known for her sharp commentary on reality TV's cultural impact. She had been fascinated by Big Brother since the first season aired in 2000, and her dream project was to investigate the show in depth. From former house guests to producers, editors, camera operators, and fans who had shaped the online world around the series, she had spent months gathering interviews. But after collecting her final notes from the season 24 finale, Mara was in a devastating accident. She fell into a coma that lasted 14 months. Reality TV evolved during that time period. New winners, controversies, twists, showmanships, and scandals were celebrated on Big Brother. Social media mapmakers rewrote the fandom landscape once again. The world she knew changed quickly, brutally, and without her involvement. When she finally woke up, medical staff gently explained that she had lost a significant amount of short-term memory. In her mind, the project she once poured herself into consisted of pieces she recognized, pieces she didn't, and pieces that felt like they belonged to someone else entirely. The project was a fragmented mosaic. But when doctors placed her recovered belongings on her lap, a notebook filled with scribbled interviews, draft chapters, houseguest sketches, and arrows connecting storylines, something sparked. She remembered the feeling, the obsession, the flames. Big Brother had always been about reinvention, resilience, starting over after the eviction lights dim. And now, so was she. Rebuilding herself and the book. Writing again wasn't easy. Names, seasons, alliances, famous fights, legendary competitions, the development of the power of veto, the beginning of the expect the unexpected era, and the transition from an isolated experiment to a hyper-strategic social game all had to be relearned by Mara. Her research process became part detective work, part therapy. She watched the seasons that she used to know by heart. Sometimes she didn't recognize the players. Occasionally, she was able to precisely recall what they were going to say before they did. Sometimes she felt déjà vu from an interview she didn't recall conducting. Slowly, she began stitching these pieces into a narrative unlike anything written before. The book's core, a show that grew up with its audience. Out of the Shadows explores every era of Big Brother. The early days, 2000 to 2005, when the show was a social experiment with America voting players out, when live feeds were still a novelty, when alliances like Chilltown were the first to define strategy. The golden strategic era, 2006 to 2014, when the game sharpened, expect the unexpected twists, villains became fan favorites, and competitions took center stage. The social media explosion, 2015 to 2020, when fandom became a force that shaped casting, house dynamics, and post-show careers. When Instagram Lives, Reddit threads, and Twitter Spaces blurred the distinction between real life and reality television. The new era of accountability, from 2021 to the present, when discussions about mental health, diversity, fairness, and representation changed the show's direction. When casting changed, when game structure shifted, when audiences demanded more humanity, openness, and accountability. But Mara didn't stop there. She connected these evolutions to what was happening in her own life. Her coma became a metaphor for the show's transformation, when it was forced to reinvent itself as a result of public criticism, shifting cultural values, or becoming too predictable. At various points, the show had woken up. Like me, she wrote, the show had to relearn itself more than once. Behind-the-scenes revelations. The book's new insights were praised by fans, who included how producers changed the competitions after receiving numerous complaints from fans, why certain twists were abandoned mid-season, the meticulous psychological preparation contestants undergo before entering the house, the method by which camera operators silently communicate in real time to capture explosive moments, and how storylines are chosen by editors to become canon for the television broadcast, and the surprising influence house guests' families have behind the scenes during medical or emotional situations. But the most emotional chapter, one that readers highlighted again and again, was the diary room. Not the diary room in the show, her diary room. During recovery, her doctors encouraged her to record voice notes to help regain memory. She started being honest, vulnerable, and unfiltered as she imagined house guests speaking into the iconic DR chair into her phone. Some of those entries made it into the book. In one, she whispered, I don't know who I used to be. However, I must find her. And additionally, I want to finish what she started. A story of television and of resurrection. When the book launched, the Big Brother community embraced it instantly. House guests, superfans, bloggers, former winners, and even the show's producers posted messages praising Mara's resilience. At her first public reading, she joked, "I guess you could say I came back into the game after a really long pause and somehow avoided being evicted." The audience roared. But later she admitted privately that writing the book was more than a professional comeback. It was a lifeline, a strategy for regaining her self-confidence by using the very show she had spent her entire career analyzing. A final twist, just like the show. In the final pages, Mara writes, "Big Brother isn't really about the competitions, the drama, or the alliances. It's about watching people crumble."